Today, we're going to dive deep into the warning signs, those early red flags that pop up when someone starts their slide into dementia, also known as memory loss, a truly devastating disease that silently eats away at memories and dims the very light of a person's mind. Let's face it, in this crazy busy world, we all have moments where we forget things, right? Like when you have a super important appointment and then, completely out of the blue, it totally slips your mind. But then, a little while later, the memory comes rushing back, clear as a bell and as vivid as if it happened yesterday. That's just a normal, everyday occurrence. Everyone's been there. But when someone actually has dementia, it's not just a little extra forgetfulness. Sometimes, memories of events completely vanish, as if they never even happened, like a totally blank slate, completely untouched. Second, they face major difficulties navigating and orienting themselves in space. People living with dementia gradually forget places they used to visit, routes that were once so familiar they felt like second nature. They become lost, adrift, unsure of where they are in the hustle and bustle of life. At times, they feel like they're wandering into some distant memory, reliving a time long past, hazy and dreamlike, as if it's not even real. Third, language issues become more obvious than ever, revealing a mountain of challenges. We all struggle to find the right words to express ourselves sometimes, but for people with dementia, they forget even the simplest words, the ones they've known their whole lives. They replace them with jumbled, nonsensical words, making sentences disjointed, choppy, and as incomprehensible as a song that's completely out of tune. Often the person they're talking to can't understand what they're trying to say, the thoughts and feelings they want to share. As a result, dementia patients have a really hard time explaining or expressing things to others, and that helplessness only makes them feel more alone and lost in the world. Fourth, difficulties with abstract thinking become a major obstacle, hindering their path to understanding. Dementia patients struggle to grasp a concept, an idea or a theory, no matter how simple it may be. To put it simply, anyone can have trouble understanding complex financial matters, but dementia patients have an even harder time recognizing numbers, the very numbers that are so familiar, so closely tied to their daily lives. They don't know what to do with these numbers. They become foreign and confusing, like some secret code they can't decipher, even after trying their hardest. Fifth, their ability to make sound judgments diminishes, leading them to make bad decisions with potentially serious consequences. To make good, logical decisions, we need to be able to judge situations properly, drawing on our knowledge and the experience we've gained over the years. However, people with dementia experience a severe decline in their judgment, making their lives harder than ever, like walking on a path full of thorns and traps. For example, in the dead of winter, a dementia patient often won't realize it's cold and that they should put on a warm coat to protect themselves from the biting wind. Sixth, their moods and behavior become erratic, as unpredictable as the weather in March. Mood swings are something almost everyone experiences in life. But a dementia patient's mood can change suddenly, without warning, and usually without any clear reason, leaving those around them feeling bewildered and deeply concerned. Their behavior also changes drastically. They become confused, disoriented, isolate themselves from the world around them, and lose interest in interacting or talking to anyone, closing their hearts to meaningful relationships. They want to isolate themselves socially, to separate themselves from others. as if they're building an invisible, impenetrable wall between themselves and the outside world, a world that feels alien and frightening. Seventh, they misplace things and forget where they put them, making life more chaotic and confusing than ever. We all sometimes forget where we put our car keys or wallet, leaving them somewhere, and then having to search high and low. But that's just a normal, everyday thing. Anyone can do it. However, someone with dementia won't just forget where they put those things, but will also forget what those keys are even for, and what they usually keep in their wallet, making familiar objects meaningless and as strange as some antique artifact. Eighth, they experience a loss of sensory function, making it harder to experience the world as if they're living in a distorted reality. At this stage, dementia patients experience a significant decline in their senses. Their sense of smell, vision, and hearing all diminish, making it harder to experience the world around them, as if they're looking through a hazy window. Ninth, they have difficulty with everyday tasks. Even the simplest things become a huge challenge. Normally, when doing a task, we might forget some minor detail, but that's perfectly normal and not something to worry about. However, with dementia, if you're cooking, you'll forget the steps, forget what to add first and what to add last, resulting in a dish that's awful and inedible. So you encounter all kinds of difficulties when performing everyday tasks, things that you used to do easily and automatically like a habit. Conditions similar to dementia. Now, let's talk a little about conditions that have symptoms similar to dementia, to get a more comprehensive understanding of this dangerous disease. Some similar symptoms can occur due to vitamin or mineral deficiencies, which can cause cognitive and memory impairments. Therefore, it's important to diagnose the condition accurately and carefully before starting any treatment, to avoid any regrettable mistakes that could have serious consequences. All right, thank you for taking the time to listen to my thoughts today. Today, let's really dig into those crucial warning signs, those early alarm bells that start going off when a person begins to slip down the slope toward dementia, also known as Alzheimer's disease. A truly nasty condition that quietly chips away at your memories, gradually dimming the mental sharpness that we often take for granted. Let's be honest, in this crazy, busy life, we all lead. Who hasn't had those moments of forgetfulness, right? Take, for example, when you have a really, really important appointment, and then, completely out of the blue, you just totally blank on it. But then, a little later, the memory comes flooding back, crystal clear and just as vivid as if it just happened yesterday. That's just a part of life, something we all experience. But when someone actually has dementia or Alzheimer's, it's not just a little extra forgetfulness. Sometimes, memories of events just completely vanish, just like they never even happened, like a totally blank page without a single mark on it. Secondly, they run into enormous problems when it comes to orienting themselves and figuring out which way is which. People living with dementia or Alzheimer's gradually start to forget places they used to visit, routes that were so familiar they felt like they were engraved in their minds, like they were a permanent part of their life. Then they end up lost and confused in the hustle and bustle of daily life, not knowing where they are or which way to go. Sometimes it's like they're wandering into some faraway memory, reliving some time in the past, flickering and unreal, like some kind of made-up dream. Thirdly, language problems also become a whole lot more noticeable, revealing problems piled as high as Mount Everest. We all struggle to find the right word to fully express what we mean. But for those unfortunate enough to be living with dementia, they forget even the simplest words. Words that are so familiar, it feels like they're part of their subconscious, an essential part of their daily lives. They replace them with jumbled up, nonsensical words, which makes their sentences disjointed, broken, and as incomprehensible as a record skipping, which can be pretty irritating and frustrating for the listener. Most of the time, the person they're talking to simply can't understand what they're trying to say, the thoughts and feelings they want to share. Because of this, dementia patients have a lot of trouble explaining things to other people, and this inability just makes them feel even more alone and lost in this big world, like a tiny boat, all by itself in the middle of the ocean. Fourthly, trouble with abstract thinking becomes a major obstacle, keeping them from understanding and exploring the world around them. Dementia patients really struggle and have to work extra hard to grasp a concept, idea, or theory, no matter how simple it might be. To put it another way, anyone might have trouble understanding complicated financial stuff, like investing in the stock market or real estate. But dementia patients have an even harder time just recognizing numbers. Those really familiar numbers that are always there in their daily lives, like the money in their wallet, the phone number of a loved one, or even their own date of birth. They don't know what to do with these numbers. They just become foreign and confusing, like some secret code they can't crack, even after giving it their best shot, even after really racking their brains. Fifthly, their ability to make good judgments declines drastically, which causes them to make wrong decisions that can have unforeseen consequences and might even affect their lives and the lives of those around them. To make the right decisions, we need to be able to make sound judgments based on what we know and the experiences we've gathered over the years. However, people with dementia have a really severe decline in their ability to judge things properly, which makes their lives harder than ever, like walking down a path full of thorns and traps, just waiting for them to stumble. For example, in the freezing cold of winter, dementia patients often don't realize that it's cold and that they should put on a warm coat to protect themselves from those bone-chilling winds, or they might just go out in light clothes and end up catching a cold and getting sick. Sixthly, their moods and behavior become erratic, as unpredictable as the weather in March, with sunshine one minute and rain the next. Almost everyone has mood swings sometimes, but dementia patients' moods can change suddenly, without warning, and usually without any good reason behind it, which leaves those around them feeling really confused and concerned, not knowing what to do to help. Their behavior also changes completely. They become confused, disoriented, cut themselves off from the world around them, and lose interest in talking to anyone, closing their hearts to good relationships, like a shy snail crawling back into its shell. They want to cut themselves off socially, separate themselves from others, as if they're building some kind of invisible, impenetrable wall between themselves and the outside world, a world that feels foreign and scary with nothing familiar about it. Seventhly, they put things down in random places and forget where they left them, which makes their lives more jumbled up and confused than ever, like a tangled mess that can't be sorted out. We all sometimes forget where we left our car keys or wallet and have to search high and low, but that's just normal. It happens to everyone now and then. However, people with Alzheimer's don't just forget where they put those things. They also forget what the keys are even for and what they usually keep in their wallet, which makes familiar things meaningless and strange, like some old antique that's no longer of any use. Eighthly, they lose their senses, which makes experiencing the world much harder than it used to be, like living in some kind of distorted reality that's not real. At this point, dementia patients have a really noticeable decline in their senses. Their sensitive smell, eyesight, and hearing all fade, which makes it harder than ever to experience the world around them, like they're looking through a foggy window and can't see things clearly. Ninthly, they have problems with everyday tasks. Even the simplest things become a big challenge, like some huge mountain they just can't climb. Normally, when doing something, we might forget some little detail, but that's perfectly normal and nothing to worry about. However, with dementia, if you're cooking, you'll forget the steps, forget what goes in first and what goes in last, which means the food will be awful and you just can't swallow it, even if you give it your best shot. So, you run into all kinds of problems doing everyday things that you used to do easily and automatically, but now they become a really big burden. Conditions similar to dementia. Now, let's talk a little about some conditions that have symptoms, like dementia, so we can have a more complete understanding of this dangerous disease and figure out how to prevent and treat it effectively. Some similar symptoms can happen because your body is missing certain vitamins or minerals, which can cause problems with your thinking and memory. So it's really important to diagnose the condition accurately and carefully before starting any treatment, so we can avoid any unfortunate mistakes that could have serious consequences and affect the health and lives of the people who are suffering. Okay, thanks for taking the time to listen to what I had to say today.